Imagine a world with no stores, no money, no markets. A world where every single thing you needed to survive, you had to make or find yourself. No restaurants, no clothing shops, no one to fix your tools when they broke. This was the reality for our ancestors for hundreds of thousands of years. But then, something incredible happened. Not a single moment, not one genius inventor, but a gradual shift in how humans thought about cooperation and exchange. Today, we're exploring how the concept of business emerged from human behavior, and how it intertwined with our evolution in ways both remarkable and troubling. Let's travel back in time. Way back. We're talking about 200,000 years ago, when modern humans first appeared in Africa. Life was brutally simple. You woke up, you searched for food, you tried not to get eaten by predators, and if you were lucky, you lived to see another day. Humans lived in small family groups, maybe 20 to 50 people at most. Everyone knew everyone. And here's the important part. Everyone did everything. If you needed a sharp stone tool to cut meat, you made it yourself. If you needed shelter, you built it. If you were hungry, you hunted or gathered food. There was no specialization. No one person was the official tool maker, while another was the official hunter. You did it all because you had to. But this way of life had a major problem. It was incredibly inefficient. Think about it. If you spent your whole morning trying to make a spear, but you weren't very good at it, you wasted precious time and energy. Meanwhile, someone else in your group might be naturally talented at making spears, but was spending their time gathering berries, which they weren't great at either. Both of you were struggling to do tasks you weren't skilled at. This was the reality of early human life. But humans have always been problem solvers. And slowly, over thousands of years, people began to notice something. Some people were better at certain things than others. There was always that one person who could make sharper stone tools than anyone else. Another person who seemed to know exactly where to find the best plants. Someone who could track animals like magic. Now, here's where it gets tricky. We don't know exactly when or how humans made the leap from everyone doing everything to people specializing. Some anthropologists argue it happened gradually over tens of thousands of years. Others point to evidence of specialized tool-making going back 70,000 years or more. What we do know is that at some point, probably in different places at different times, humans had a radical realization. What if, instead of everyone doing everything poorly, people focused on what they were good at, and then exchanged their goods or services with each other? This was the birth of specialization. And it was the seed that would grow into the world's first business. Picture this scene. A small tribe gathered around a fire at night. There's a man named Og. We'll call him Og. He's incredibly skilled at making stone tools. His hand axes are sharper. His spear points more deadly than anyone else's in the tribe. But Og has a problem. He's so focused on perfecting his craft that he doesn't have time to hunt or gather food. He's hungry. Meanwhile, there's a woman named Una. She's an exceptional hunter. She can track animals through the forest and always comes back with meat. But her tools keep breaking, and she's terrible at making new ones. One day, Una approaches Og with a proposition. I'll give you some of the meat from my next hunt if you make me 3 new spear points. Og thinks about it. He's hungry, and making 3 spear points is easy for him. Deal. And just like that, the first transaction in human history takes place. The first business is born. Now, this might not sound like much. It's just 2 people helping each other out, right? But this simple exchange represented a fundamental shift in how humans organized themselves. For the first time in history, Someone was producing something not just for themselves, but specifically to trade with someone else. Og wasn't just making tools anymore, he was running a business. The impact of this first transaction rippled through the tribe. Other people saw what Og and Una did and thought, hey, maybe I could do that too. The man who was great at finding honey started trading it for fish. The woman who could weave baskets better than anyone began exchanging them for animal hides. Slowly but surely, people began to specialize. And here's where things get really interesting. When people specialized, they got even better at their craft. Oji, who was now making tools full-time, became a master craftsman. He experimented with different techniques. He discovered that heating certain stones made them easier to shape. He learned which types of rock made the sharpest edges. His tools became so good that people from neighboring tribes started hearing about him. They would travel to trade with Og specifically. This is called the division of labor, and it's one of the most important concepts in all of economics. When people focus on what they're good at, they become more efficient. They produce higher quality goods. And everyone benefits. But there was still a problem. Let's say Una just made new spear points last week and doesn't need any right now. But Og is hungry today and needs meat. Or maybe Og wants a basket, but the basket maker already has plenty of tools and doesn't need any more. You see the issue? For a direct trade to work, both people have to want what the other person has at the exact same moment. Economists call this the double coincidence of wants problem. And it's a nightmare. Early humans struggled with this for thousands of years. They developed complex systems of favors and social debt. If I help you today, you owe me later. But as tribes grew larger and interactions became more frequent, this system became too complicated to track. Then, around 9000 BC, humans discovered agriculture. This changed everything. For the first time in history, people could produce more food than they personally needed. They could store it. They could plan for the future. And most importantly, they could trade it. With the agricultural revolution, permanent settlements appeared. Villages formed, then towns, then cities. And as these communities grew, so did the need for more complex business transactions. Suddenly, you had potters making clay vessels, weavers making cloth, farmers growing grain, brewers making beer. The division of labor was exploding, but the barter system was breaking down. Imagine you're a pottery maker in ancient Mesopotamia around 3000 BC. You need grain to feed your family, so you take your pots to the market. But the grain farmer doesn't need pots. He needs a new plow. The plow maker doesn't need pots either. He needs cloth. The cloth maker needs pots, but she doesn't have enough cloth to trade for the number of pots you need to trade for enough grain. See the problem? You could spend all day trying to arrange a chain of trades and still go home hungry. Humans needed a better solution. And so, somewhere around 3000 BC in ancient Mesopotamia, another revolutionary idea emerged. What if there was something that everyone wanted and agreed had value? Something that could represent the worth of any other item? Something you could trade for anything? This was the invention of money. Now, the very first forms of money weren't coins or paper bills. They were commodities that everyone needed. In Mesopotamia, it was barley. But here's a fascinating detail most people don't know. Workers building the pyramids and ziggurats weren't paid in gold or silver. They were paid in beer. That's right. Beer was a form of currency. A portion of the barley was brewed, and workers received rations of beer as wages. Different quality beer for different levels of workers. It was nutritious, safer than water, and everyone wanted it. In other places, money took different forms. salt, cattle, or shells. The key was that everyone agreed these items had value. If you were a potter, you could trade your pots for barley, even if you didn't need barley right now, because you knew that later you could trade that barley for anything else you needed. The invention of money was like pouring gasoline on the fire of business. Suddenly, trade exploded. Markets became bustling centers of activity. People could specialize even further. You could be a full-time musician, entertainer, or teacher because you could earn money from your services and use that money to buy food, clothing, and shelter. But here's what's truly fascinating. Business didn't just make life easier for humans. It fundamentally changed who we are as a species. Let me explain. When humans started specializing in trading, it created something called mutual dependence. Augie, the toolmaker, needed Una, the hunter. Una needed Og. This interdependence meant people had to cooperate. They had to trust each other. They had to communicate clearly. And they had to keep their word. If Og made terrible tools, or if Una never delivered the meat she promised, the whole system broke down. So business created social pressure to be honest, reliable, and fair. These aren't just nice qualities. They're survival traits. Communities that developed strong business ethics thrived. Those that didn't fell apart. Over thousands of years, humans evolved to be natural traders and negotiators. We developed complex language to discuss terms and conditions. We created legal systems to enforce contracts. We built trust through reputation. Think about that. Business helped shape human evolution itself, but the evolution of business wasn't finished. And here's something worth pausing on. Not every human society went down this path. The indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest, for example, developed complex gift economies based on potlatch ceremonies. Instead of trading for profit, high-status individuals gave away or destroyed wealth to gain prestige. This worked for thousands of years. Similarly, many indigenous Australian communities maintained kinship-based sharing systems without formal trade. They survived, even thrived, without what we'd call business. So why did market-based exchange dominate? Part of it was scale. As populations grew into the thousands and millions, gift economies and kinship networks couldn't keep up. But part of it was also conquest. Societies with advanced business systems often had military advantages. They could organize larger armies, develop better weapons, and project power across distances. The spread of business wasn't just about its benefits, it was also about power. But let's return to how business evolved. As civilizations grew, so did the complexity of trade. Around 700 BC, the Lydians in modern-day Turkey invented standardized metal coins. These were guaranteed by the government to have a specific amount of precious metal. This was huge. Now you didn't have to weigh or test the purity of silver every time you made a trade. You could trust the coin. This made transactions faster and easier. Business boomed. With reliable money, merchants could travel long distances to trade. The Silk Road connected China to Europe. Ships crossed the Mediterranean carrying goods from Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Business was now global. And here's where it gets really interesting. As trade networks expanded, they spread more than just goods. They spread ideas. A merchant from China would bring silk to Rome and return with stories of Roman engineering. An Egyptian trader would carry papyrus to Greece and learn about Greek philosophy. Business became the vehicle for cultural exchange. Mathematics, astronomy, medicine, architecture, art. All of these flowed along trade routes. Business wasn't just about buying and selling anymore. It was connecting human civilizations. But let's talk about something that often gets overlooked: the social impact of business. In early human societies, your status was determined by birth. If you were born into a powerful family, you had power. If you were born into a poor family, you stayed poor. But business changed this. For the first time in history, someone could improve their social standing through trade. A clever merchant with no noble blood could become wealthier than aristocrats. A skilled craftsperson could earn respect and influence. Business created social mobility. This was revolutionary. It meant that intelligence, hard work, and innovation were rewarded. Not just who your parents were. This incentivized people to improve themselves, to learn new skills, to take risks. Human ambition found a productive outlet. Of course, business wasn't perfect. It created inequality. Some people became very rich, while others remained poor. Greed and exploitation emerged, and we need to be honest about this. The history of business has chapters soaked in blood. The transatlantic slave trade was a business. Millions of people were kidnapped, sold, and worked to death because it was profitable. The colonization of the Americas, Africa, and Asia was driven largely by business interests. Companies like the British East India Company ruled entire countries, extracting wealth while millions starved. The Industrial Revolution created unprecedented wealth, but it also created horrific working conditions. Children working 14-hour days in coal mines. Workers losing limbs in factories with no compensation. The fundamental tension of business, profit versus human welfare, has never been fully resolved. Even today, we see this tension. Pharmaceutical companies pricing life-saving drugs beyond reach. Tech companies exploiting user data. Fashion brands using sweatshop labor. The profit motive that drives innovation also drives exploitation when left unchecked. But here's what's also true. The fundamental concept of people specializing and trading for mutual benefit remains powerful. The question isn't whether business is good or evil. It's how we structure it, regulate it, and ensure it serves human flourishing rather than just profit. Let's jump forward to the Middle Ages. Europe is emerging from the Dark Ages, and business is evolving again. Guilds form. These are associations of craftspeople. The Blacksmiths' Guild, the Weavers' Guild, the Bakers' Guild. Guilds controlled quality standards. They trained apprentices. They protected their members' interests. This was early business organization. Companies were forming. Then, in the 1600s, something extraordinary happened. The Dutch East India Company was founded in 1602. It was the world's first publicly traded company. People could buy shares and own a piece of the business. This was mind-blowing. Now you didn't have to be a merchant or craftsperson to participate in business. You could be an investor. This innovation allowed businesses to raise enormous amounts of capital. They could fund massive projects, explore new territories, build ships and factories. The scale of business exploded. Then came the Industrial Revolution in the late 1700s. Machines powered by steam could do the work of hundreds of people. Factories appeared. Mass production began. Business transformed from small workshops into massive enterprises. And this brings us to an important question. How did all of this, from that first trade between Og and Una to massive global corporations, actually help humans evolve? Let's break it down. First, business drove innovation. When there's profit to be made, people innovate. Every major invention, the wheel, printing press, steam engine, electricity, computers, was driven by someone seeing a need, creating a solution, and profiting from it. This constant innovation pushed humanity forward, each generation building on the previous one. Second, business created abundance and drove education. A farmer using modern tools can feed thousands. A factory can produce millions of products. And as business became complex, Literacy and math became valuable. Merchants needed to keep records, write contracts, do calculations. Education spread beyond priests and nobles to anyone wanting to succeed. More educated populations became more innovative and capable of solving complex problems. Third, business connected humanity and created structure. Trade routes connected civilizations. Today, your smartphone contains materials from dozens of countries. This interconnection makes war less likely. When countries depend on each other for trade, they have incentives for peace. Business also requires organization, planning production, coordinating suppliers, meeting deadlines. This organizational thinking transformed how humans structured governments, cities, and even how we measured time itself. But perhaps most importantly, business taught humans to think about the future. In hunter-gatherer societies, you lived day to day. You found food, you ate it, but business requires future thinking. If you're a farmer, you plant seeds now to harvest crops months later. If you're a merchant, you invest in goods now to sell them for profit later. If you're a craftsperson, you develop your skills now to earn more in the future. Business made humans plan ahead, save resources, delay gratification. These cognitive skills are fundamental to human civilization. Without the ability to think about and plan for the future, we would still be living hand to mouth. Now, let's address something important. Business has evolved tremendously since that first trade between Og and Una. But the fundamental principle remains the same: people specializing in what they're good at and trading with each other for mutual benefit. Today, we have corporations with millions of employees. We have global supply chains. We have digital businesses that exist entirely online. We have cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. But at its core, it's still the same idea. I'll give you something you value. You give me something I value. We're both better off. The scale has changed. The complexity has increased. But the essence remains. And here's what's truly remarkable. Business continues to drive human evolution even today. Think about the Internet. It was developed by businesses looking for new ways to communicate and trade. Now it's transformed how we live, learn, and connect with each other. Think about renewable energy. Businesses are competing to create better solar panels, more efficient batteries, and cleaner energy sources. This could save our planet. Think about medical advances. Pharmaceutical companies, driven by profit, have developed vaccines, antibiotics, and treatments that have saved billions of lives. Yes, the profit motive can lead to problems: overpriced drugs, environmental damage, unethical practices. But the same motive also drives incredible innovation. So, what can we learn from the story of the first business? What lessons does it hold for us today? First, cooperation is more powerful than competition. Og and Una didn't compete to see who could do everything better. They cooperated, each doing what they did best. Modern business works the same way. Companies that cooperate with suppliers, partners, and even competitors often outperform those that try to do everything alone. Second, specialization creates value. You don't have to be good at everything. Find what you're great at, master it. Then trade your expertise for what you need. This applies to individuals, companies, and even countries. Third, trust is the foundation of all business. Without trust, trade collapses. This is why reputation matters, why contracts exist, why ethics aren't just nice to have but essential for success. Fourth, innovation comes from solving problems. Every successful business started with someone identifying a problem and creating a solution. This mindset, looking for problems to solve, is what drives progress. And fifth, business is fundamentally about people. It's about understanding what people need, what they value, what will improve their lives. The most successful businesses throughout history have been those that genuinely served people. Let's talk about where business is heading. In the 21st century, we're seeing business evolve in ways that would have been unimaginable even 50 years ago. We have the gig economy, where people can be their own bosses, offering services directly to customers. This is actually a return to the earliest forms of business. Individual craftspeople and service providers, but powered by modern technology. We have social enterprises that blend profit with social good. These businesses measure success not just in money, but in positive impact on society and the environment. We have artificial intelligence and automation changing how businesses operate. Some fear this will eliminate jobs, but history shows that business innovation creates new opportunities even as it disrupts old ones. The printing press put scribes out of work, but created entire publishing industries. The automobile replaced horse-drawn carriages, but created millions of new jobs. Every business revolution has followed this pattern: disruption followed by adaptation and new growth. We're also seeing a shift in values. Modern consumers increasingly care about how businesses operate. They want ethical sourcing, environmental sustainability, fair labor practices. This is forcing businesses to evolve beyond pure profit maximization. And this is actually a return to the earliest principles of business: serving the community, building trust, creating value for everyone involved. Looking back at our journey, from Og and Una's first trade to today's global economy, one thing is clear. Business is one of humanity's most important inventions. It's not just about making money. It's about cooperation, innovation, and progress. It's about connecting people across time and distance. It's about turning human creativity and effort into tangible improvements in our quality of life. The first business wasn't started by a genius entrepreneur with a detailed plan and venture capital funding. It was started by regular people trying to make their lives a little bit easier. They realized that by working together, by specializing and trading, everyone could be better off. This simple insight sparked a revolution that continues today. Every time you buy something, you're participating in a system that started tens of thousands of years ago with that first trade. You're part of a network that connects billions of people around the world. You're contributing to the ongoing evolution of human civilization. Business has shaped who we are as a species. It's taught us to cooperate, to innovate, to plan for the future, to build trust, to create value. These skills and values are embedded in human culture now. They're part of our evolutionary inheritance. And here's the beautiful thing: the story isn't over. Business continues to evolve. New forms of trade emerge. New technologies enable new possibilities. The next chapter is being written right now. But let's return to where we started, to Og and Una. Imagine them by that fire, making their first trade. 3 spear points for fresh meat. They couldn't have known what they were starting. They weren't thinking about global supply chains or stock markets or cryptocurrency. They were just trying to make tomorrow a little bit easier. They discovered something profound: that by relying on each other, by recognizing each other's strengths and trading their efforts, both could be better off than either would be alone. This insight, this simple recognition of mutual benefit through exchange, rippled forward through millennia. It shaped how we organize society, how we relate to strangers, how we think about value and worth. It connected distant peoples, drove technological progress, and yes, also enabled exploitation and suffering on massive scales. Business is not humanity's savior, but it's also not our curse. It's a tool, a powerful tool that reflects our values, our priorities, our choices about what kind of world we want to build. The next time you make a purchase, pause for a moment. You're not just buying something. You're participating in a system that stretches back to those first firelight exchanges. You're casting a vote with your money about what kind of business practices you want to support. You're part of a story that began with Og and Una and continues with you. What will your chapter say? If this journey through time gave you a new perspective on the world around you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the forces that shaped human civilization, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.